A wave of courageous dads defending their girls at school board meetings has gone viral. Plus, Supreme Court justices take on LGBTQ propaganda that is forced on the little kids against their parents' will. Meanwhile, right here in Virginia, new stats reveal a horrifying reality. We are the abortion capital of the South, with the largest increase in abortions in the nation. We discuss all this and more. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Candi Cushman, with our president, Victoria Cobb. Well, welcome everyone. Glad to have you with us for Speak Up Virginia. Remember, if you want more people to know what's really going on in Virginia, to share our playlist, our Speak Up Virginia playlist on YouTube. And also, we are on Apple and Spotify and other audio-only platforms like that if you want to check us out and share it with friends. So getting right into today's topic, we have a lot of sobering things to talk about just on abortion stats in our state and a Supreme Court decision affecting parental rights. But I wanted to start out on an encouraging note because there's so much serious stuff to dive into. And that is, we are seeing this wave of really bold dads going into school board meetings, speaking up for their daughters, and it's going viral.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the dads. You know, I think the moms, Mama Bear movement, that's been a thing for a while. And it's not that dads haven't been in there, but it's nice to see that that's kind of making its way to the forefront, I guess.
Yeah, and you remember at our gala, Bethany Hamilton gave a specific call out, a challenge to men. Where are the men? So it seems like they're answering the call lately.
Yeah, that is true. And I think it just has a different impact. I mean, moms have that, that stereotypical sort of like we're protecting our young ones, but men, it's more like a no, this is not appropriate. Like it's just the force that comes sometimes with a guy delivering that message can just be a little bit more powerful or different or just hit a little differently. So I think it's great.
And we believe it's a role that God gave them innately.
Yeah, absolutely. They are the protector of the family. And I think that them illustrating that in these school board meetings is really powerful.
All right, well, let's just start with this first excerpt. We have excerpts from this dad, Sam Arrington. I think he's speaking to the Valley View School Board in Illinois. And this guy just tells it like it is. He's very blunt, but there's some serious truth bombs in here. So let's just listen to him.
Is that how we're to act? We're going to let boys in the bathrooms? I want to ask all the fathers up here to claim to love their daughters. Would you be okay if someone up here started getting naked in front of your daughter? No, yes, they are. If they go in the bathroom, they will get naked in front of your daughter. You are a liar.
Hey, folks.
Okay?
We're not doing this.
Okay, that's all I'm saying.
We're not doing the back and forth.
These men, these boys, these biological boys, you're going to allow them to go in and get naked in front of our kids? Are we that far gone now? Where does this stop, guys? Where does this plateau? Next thing you know, we're going to be okaying pedophilia? We're already letting kids pretend to be furries. Listen, let these kids get 18. Let them grow up. And at 18, let them decide what they want to be. More power to you. But don't twist and manipulate their mind when they are impressionable. Leave our kids alone. Please, leave them alone. There is no study, not one that's ever been done, that WPATH, W-P-A-T-H, World Professional Association of Transgender Health, set out to do a study about suicide. And did you know they could find no conclusive evidence that letting your child transition will save their life? Not one study. We are going down a path of irreversible evil and harm. We are accepting evil in 2025. This is sick. All these men getting up here speaking today, they don't have the courage to look at their kids and say, hey, I love you and I'm going to support you, but you're a boy or you're a girl. You were born in God's image. That's what men should do. That's what real men do. That's what real men of courage do.
I mean, he lays it out there. This is actually what's going to happen in bathrooms. And I think people are sort of, the crowd's reacting this whole time. And it's almost like we don't want you to say what actually will happen. And I think sometimes it needs to be said.
Yeah, he's definitely saying the quiet part out loud that nobody wants to acknowledge, that we're on this slippery slope. I mean, he mentioned furries. I mean, we have cases that we've dealt with teachers encountering this in their classrooms.
Lest you think that's a crazy out west kind of thing, we have had a client at the Family Foundation's Law Center, Founding Freedoms Law Center, that was expected as a teacher to humor this idea that someone thinks they're an animal. And so, he's not
talking about fiction here.
And here's the thing, and I hate to say it this way, but like when, and this is dating me, but when, all the way back to when the Supreme Court ruled that sodomy was now, okay, back to 2003, I think it was, or 1 even, we would talk about where is this going to go? And then when it was same-sex marriage, where is this going to go? Mm-hmm. And I hate to say it, but we've been right every time. Like when they try to make it sound like we're too extreme on our side, these things come to fruition. But this isn't even, this is happening simultaneous. This isn't even like down the road this is going to happen. No, there are really, truly kids acting like animals now and adults supposed to be playing pretend about this. Yeah,
there is a logic when you open these doors, and I don't think society at large realized that this would lead to our women being vulnerable, our little girls being vulnerable, like what's happening now, people wanting to back away from that. But he also mentioned WPATH, and I thought that was interesting. He mentioned the lack of statistics that show that pushing kids down this gender transition path is actually going to save lives.
Well, it's finally kind of coming around that there's been a bunch of effort put in by those that support the entire trans ideology to work up some science studies to back some things. And now it's finally coming to roost, like, no, the outcomes aren't what you've claimed they are. There are errors in any study that actually attempted to do this because it was literally created with a bias, which is kind of the opposite of what you're supposed to be doing in science. And then, I think it's clear that there's really no study that is in any way pointing to, oh, yes, somehow the suicide risk is less if you affirm a child's confusion. And so I think that's really important that people are starting to get to the facts around this stuff.
Well, and we've even seen studies indicating the opposite, that when you look at adults that have in the past undergone gender reassignment surgery, they actually are showing higher risk of suicide than comparable peers. So,
and there's stories, too. I mean, there are a lot of people who have now transitioned, and they know it didn't solve what they were hoping to solve, and those stories are coming out as well. So it's the science, it's people's real-life lived experience. And so the idea that we are going to continue to allow this stuff to get pushed on children is absurd. And these dads are kind of going, no, we know where this goes. We now have the science. We have the stories. We're done.
All right, I got 2 more dads I want to share with y'all, and these are both from Colorado. Let's just start with this first one from Colorado. His name is Dustin, and he is speaking to a Jefferson County school board. Let's listen to him.
I'm not a politician. I'm not a loud voice on social media. I'm a father, a quiet one who goes to work, tries to do right by his family, and stays out of the spotlight. But now you're gonna remember my name. You'll remember it because I'm not just fighting for my daughter. I'm fighting to make sure that what happens to me, to my family, never happens to another parent in this district. My daughter changed her identity, not after years of discussion or family dialogue, not after joint input from both of her parents. No, this happened quickly, secretly, encouraged by a school-appointed therapist and a system that never thought to include me. And the school didn't inform me, they didn't include me, they didn't even ask me, they replaced me. By the time I found out, I was already labeled the problem.
Well, here's another dad saying, leave our kids alone. Victoria, what's significant about these dads in Colorado specifically stepping up here to speak out?
Well, Colorado is in the throes of this battle, and the way they're in the throes of it is that they have a bill trying to become law that would essentially criminalize parents who don't affirm their child's gender. So it's the government stepping into the home and saying, you take on our values or else. And so they are battling it. But I just want to remind Virginians that even though we're seeing this in Colorado, we're highlighting some Colorado dads, that idea was put forward by one of our elected officials, Guzman, and she brought it forward as if it was a valid idea and was going to be a bill. Thankfully, she got so much blowback, the bill didn't go anywhere. But we better be on guard here too.
Yeah, because they're getting close to passing it, and we were able to stop it, but it could come up again.
Oh yeah, and she's running for office. Yeah. I mean, you know,
that's a good point. Like she's running for lieutenant governor.
Yeah, she's running for higher office. So she isn't even she put that idea out there, got a lot of blowback, but still thinks that her ideas should be elevated to statewide office. So heads up.
Yes. All right. Well, here's another dad again from Colorado. This is the Durango school board area. He comes across really, low key, very factual, but there is a lot of truth bombs within what he is saying with the research he's done. We couldn't play all of it, but before the clip you're going to hear, he was explaining he'd done a lot of FOIA's Freedom of Information requests and asked about what they were spitting on DEI. He had all of his facts, and here's how he was summarizing that.
It's clear what you're spending our money and time on, and it's not academics. It's social engineering. This is why our students are failing, and you're robbing them of a quality education. Since March of 2021, you've spent $214,251 with a social engineering consultant, Make It Plain Consulting, out of Cincinnati. What have we got for our taxpayers' dollars? Besides teaching kids and some staff how to hate themselves, how to hate others, and how to become victims at every turn. And now the highest legislative aspiration you guys have for this year is to create more laws in Colorado, making it more difficult for parents to get information out of you guys and making it easier for you to hide what you're doing from parents. You forget who is in charge of the school district and who you're supposed to work for. It's the parents and the taxpayers.
All right, he is directly calling them out for proposing or supporting legislation that cuts parents out of the picture. What do you think is significant, or what do you make out of all these dads suddenly stepping it up and getting all this coverage?
Well, again, it's a great thing to see, but I think it's because the aggressive nature of the left in Colorado. The push is just to absolutely indoctrinate the kids, shut the parents out, and go further to say those parents are actually sort of criminal for holding the beliefs that they have. So the pressure's just on, and I'm glad that it's forcing people to step up to the table to make their voices heard and to challenge these school boards. It's amazing to me that these are even battles we're having. Just honestly, it's mind-blowing that a school board can so disrespect parents and that legislation can be introduced at the state level that is so utterly, it's just so clear that there's an ideology and everybody's gonna align or not.
Well, here in Virginia, we saw this parental rights wave that swept in Governor Youngkin, and that was largely led, I would say, by mama bears. And I don't know if this is just a sign that the culture has got so over the top that we now have men stepping into this, or that they feel more freedom, maybe the climate, that they feel more freedom to step into their protector role.
I think that's fair because we've seen that this has really picked up a lot of steam over the last couple of years nationally. We have a president who's willing to call a spade in a very direct way with what men and women are and how they are different. And I think that kind of frees up men to step in.
And bringing up the president, he said to children, you're perfect the way God made you. And so, the dad's kind of echoing that. The first dad we played.
Yeah, I think even and this is hard because, our elected officials from the president down to the dog catcher have flaws and they have great points, but they hold power in their words. They have a microphone, they get played, and certainly the president of the United States. And so although it's amazing we had to have a president say that, there's power in that. Now we're seeing that it sort of prompts others to move forward to the microphone and step into the space.
As we say, courage is contagious and emboldens other people.
Yes.
Well, the good news is there is a significant Supreme Court case going on right now that I hope will embolden more parents like these that we've been hearing, and also will help parents, could end up helping parents right here in Virginia. Tell us about that.
Well, it is great to see this case move forward and to the Supreme Court finally dealing with this issue, because we know the issues in a lot of places in very similar ways, although I think Montgomery County, Maryland might take the cake for how aggressive they are against parents, because they essentially have put in place a policy that says parents are not going to be told and that they can't pull their kid out of when the school decides to push books and curriculum type materials into classrooms as young as, and this is what's really important about this case, is we're not talking high school, we're not even talking middle school. They're talking about from the pre-K level through 6th grade, and that's literally in the courtroom oral arguments, it came out that could be someone that is actually 3 years old but
Yeah.
probably at least 4-year-olds. And so when you think about, and so these parents are saying, and their parents have different faith backgrounds.
Yeah.
So that's interesting to me.
I think some of the lead parents in this case were Muslim.
Muslim, Catholic. I mean, this is not just one faith saying this violates my faith. There's several faiths that this is just an affront to. And so I like that we have plaintiffs in this case coming forward from different backgrounds saying, look, a whole bunch of us think this is violating our faith for you to be, and really their issue is this is coercion, this is influence, this is indoctrination. It's not just...
Well, it really was outrageous because this was, the attorney representing the parents explained, there were these LGBTQ themed books that were introduced as part of what I think he called inclusivity. Wait, I'm
like a
totally
promotional
butchering that
effort.
word. Yeah. It's, in the name of inclusiveness, this was introduced. And he specifically mentioned that they were required to bring up these books like at least 5 times in the year or something like that.
It wasn't just subtle, like they're available. It was, this is part of the curriculum. This is what you're trying to get across. The same way you're teaching them ABCs, you're teaching them this stuff. And the books,
and it's not in sex ed.
Right. This is not in sex ed. This is not separated out. This is in the course of, and of course, and this comes up in the oral arguments that you don't, in the lower grades, things aren't actually really very separated. They're just sort of like, and that's a big, sort of fact of elementary school. It's like you're learning to read while you're, learning all these other things. And I think we got to talk about what the books are.
Let's talk about the name of some of these books. We're going to put up some images here. So you've got Pride Puppy. That is obviously for very little kids. Prince and Knight. Uncle Bobby's Wedding. I think we've heard of that before, those of us in this battle. But this is a bit of a new one for me anyway. Born Ready, the true story of a boy named Penelope. So that's getting a little out there to be imposed.
And this is now, we're not just in imaginary land. This is a true story, right? I think that has some sort of like emphasis that they're putting in. And so parents are basically saying, look, the school needs to recognize that we hold different views, that we have different values, and that you're trampling our parental rights and our religious freedoms that are protected by the Constitution, that you can't just come in with a policy that trumps our First Amendment freedoms.
Well, and here's the part that really gets my blood boiling, is that they first were letting them opt out.
Yes, and then they pulled that out from underneath them.
Then they just said, no, we're taking away opt-out, we're taking away notification, we're not going to give any parent that right. You're talking about some 70,000 parents of elementary school kids in Montgomery County that no longer have the right to even be notified when Pride Puppy is going to be, pushed on your little kid.
Yeah, and this isn't like books that are just championing like let's all be kind and whatever. This is really these books are let's be kind in one particular area, LGBT, right? And it's literally pushing that these things are good and okay.
Yes.
And that is what's violating people's faith. That is not the belief of the Christian faith. It is not the belief of the Muslim faith. And so it is trying to teach these kids, you are to view it this way.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
And this one book that what did I call it? Pride Puppy? Is that what it's called? Puppy Pride. I can't remember. But Puppy Pride.
Puppy Pride.
I want to explain a little bit about how this book
Puppy
goes. It's Pride Puppy.
Pride Puppy. Get it right. Pride Puppy.
It goes beyond just, nice little fun images. Okay. So at one point, the book actually tasked little 3 and 4-year-olds to go and search for images from a word list. And let me share with you this word list. So you've got words like leather. I mean, are you serious? Leather. Drag queen. Well, I think it's queen, but they mean drag queen. Underwear, intersex flag. They have the name of a celebrated sex worker, LGBTQ activist. Sex worker would be their word, maybe, but it would be prostitute.
Yeah.
So, let's understand what the level of indoctrination here going on. And to that point, there was this really fascinating exchange between Justice Gorsuch and the school's attorney addressing this book. So let's just listen to that.
They're being used in English language instruction at age 3. Some of them.
So Pride Puppy was the book that was used for the pre-kindergarten curriculum. That's no longer in the curriculum.
That's the one where they are supposed to look for the leather and things and bondage, things like that.
It's not bondage. It's a woman in a leather.
Sex worker, right?
No, that's not correct. No.
I read it.
It's a drag queen.
Drag
So-
queen and drag
Correct.
queen.
The leather that they're pointing to is a woman in a leather jacket, and one of the words is drag queen in the search.
And they're supposed to look for those.
It is an option at the end of the book, correct?
Yeah, okay. And you've included these in the English language curriculum rather than the human sexuality curriculum to influence students. Is that fair? That's what the district court found. Do you agree
I
with
think
that?
to the extent the district court found that it was to influence them towards civility, the natural consequence of being exposed
Whatever, but to influence them.
in the manner that I just mentioned, yes.
Yeah, the thing that he points out about this book that's almost so offensive is that there's actually an activity. Like the kids are engaging. He talks about how at the end of the book, they're actually like there's like a search for these things in the book, which is when you make things interactive, they tell you this in teaching. Like if you want somebody to learn something, make them participate in it. Make them not just regurgitate it or hear it, but actually like be involved in it. So to me, this is actually maybe the most offensive is because you're drawing the kid in and making them participate in this. And so anyway, I just thought that was great that the justice drew that out and flagged that.
And what was so interesting, this whole case, the parents' case that they are making is that this violated their religious freedoms to raise their child according to their religious beliefs. And you had the liberal justices arguing that it doesn't violate that because the kids have the right to disagree with the teacher. And the conservative justices they did an excellent job of pointing out really a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old is going to say, I disagree, in this case.
Yeah, you cannot. And I think the courts have already had a fair number of decisions where that is the reason we treat children as children is because they aren't yet fully developed. They can't disagree. They don't have the reasoning built they're just literally not developed in the brain way to be able to do that. And again, that's the age we're actually teaching kids safety, right? So like, at 3 years old, I'm trying to teach my kid, you don't cross the road. I'm going to be the one that helps you make sure that we're safe. And so you need them following adults. Like you actually need them for their own development to trust and believe
the parent
at that very young age, that is formative. And so the idea that they even want to encourage that, or they think that's okay, or they think that's actually happening, but any of that is just flat wrong.
To encourage them to follow adults other than parents, like to let other adults undermine parents.
Or that they can or their argument that somehow a kid can still disagree at that age.
Yeah.
One, they aren't. We're training them not to yet. Like that comes later. That literally intentionally comes later. And so it's just a disaster the way liberals think. I mean, just truly, I am floored sometimes at the way liberals think. And they have to figure out that this is counter to how they raise their kids in other ways. Like they eventually have to figure out like, no, I actually want my kid to trust adults and I need to reinforce that, because I'm trying to.
Safe adults.
Safe adults.
All right. Well, to that point, let's listen to this other exchange with Justice Alito this time, taking on the book Uncle Bobby's Wedding.
Yeah, the book has a clear message. And a lot of people think it's a good message, and maybe it is a good message, but it's a message that a lot of people who hold on to traditional religious beliefs don't agree with. I don't think anybody can read that and say, well, this is just telling children that there are occasions when men marry other men. Uncle Bobby gets married to his boyfriend Jamie, and everybody's happy, and everything is, it portrays this. Everyone accepts this, except for the little girl, Chloe, who has reservations about it. But her mother corrects her. No, you shouldn't have any reservations about this. As I said, it has a clear moral message.
Wait a minute, the reservation is about...
Can I finish, please? It has a clear moral message, and it may be a good message. It's just a message that a lot of religious people disagree with.
And when you add to that, Your Honor, instruction that if a student disagrees, teachers are supposed to say things like, well, I have friends in that situation. Do you think it's really fair for you to agree? Or to suggest that it's hurtful for students who disagree.
Well, I think it's very strong, the point that Justice Alito made, that regardless of whether you agree with what the book is saying or not, and maybe some people do, the book is undeniably telling kids to take a moral stance on this issue.
And the teachers are apparently encouraged to actually like say that it's wrong to disagree with this. That's part of what they're actually communicating in the instruction to the teachers that are using the book. So that's a big problem.
Yeah, because the attorney from Beckett Fund that's representing the parents, he followed up great with that point. You know, that I think he said there was instructions to teachers to say something about it being hurtful.
Yeah.
To have this response. So yeah, you are silencing and I would say coercing.
Yeah, and it's just interesting to me that it ends up into this whole conversation. I don't think we can play all the clip, but it ends up in this whole conversation where Sotomayor is kind of trying to say, well, we don't even know the books. At one point in this court hearing, she's saying we don't even know that the books are being used, and it's literally like. What's funny is she actually is arguing against the facts of the case those are embedded, meaning the books are in use. And it gets into a whole conversation that is the point of like, where they say, the other attorney basically says, no, children in the classroom have like testified to this and the parents are saying that. And she's like, well, are the parents in the classroom? And I'm literally floored that she is trying to undo the facts because I think the argument's so weak on their end.
I think that was Candi Brown.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I get the wrong justice? I think you're right. I think you're right.
But
I'm remembering it wrong.
Both her and Sotomayor, it was,
They just need to change the facts because I think they're standing on such shaky ground to try to pretend that these books aren't intended to influence, that the policy isn't intended to influence, that it's not being used that way. They gotta undo that because it's really hard to justify this kind of indoctrination against people's faith in the public school.
Well, in that clip we just heard, you could hear Sotomayor trying to break it and interrupt.
Right.
But they had this whole conversation I thought was interesting, the liberals are trying to argue this is about exposure. We just need LGBTQ folks to be exposed, them to know they're out in the world versus coercion. And that's where Alito is trying to make the case.
These are definitely coercive.
It's coercive.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think he does a very good job of that. So we're fortunate to have justices that did their homework, that read the books, that are making the points and not sort of allowing the left to sort of distort the facts and try to make it something other than what it is.
Well, it definitely didn't sound like the case was going well just from the hearing for, the school side of this. So what are your thoughts on how this case could impact parents, including parents here in Virginia?
Well, I mean, I certainly never want to predict the outcome of a case because you just never know. But I would say this, if the case ends up going the way of the parents, so if the Supreme Court comes out with a ruling, and it could be narrow, it could be broader, there's a couple ways they could go with this. I heard in some of the arguments some discussion that almost made me believe that it was sort of maybe we only take up the narrow question here. But the bottom line is, if they go our way, this should fortify, because it's Supreme Court level, it should really fortify the arguments that our parents have here in Virginia when we're battling things. And I think in particular, we've been trying to, at the Family Foundation, we've had all these attempts to put in legislation that parents need to be notified all the time. And the big one, of course, was Sage's Law and saying, look, if they go to a counselor, they need to be known. But I think it should really help. And this is right over the Virginia line. This is the part of Maryland is so close to our Fairfax County, and we know what's going on in Fairfax County, where they have basically floated the same idea. They got a lot of pushback. They're temporarily, I guess, stepping away from that idea. And so I think this has huge impact. I think if the case comes out correctly, it should tell the Fairfax School Board, you're done. Stop. Don't move any further. Don't try this K-6 stuff you were aiming for.
That would be huge. Hopefully they won't try to find some sort of compromise technicality like they've done. I really hope we go for the huge impact here.
I would love to see the Supreme Court go as wide and far as they can on behalf of parental rights. So obviously we'll wait and see. These are always these big decisions, and we sit around usually at the end of June twiddling our thumbs, waiting desperately to see what the Supreme Court opinion will be. So we don't get to know this soon, but we will in a little while, a couple months.
All right. Well, this is a lot, I think, for people to digest all the things that is going on in our state right now. I mean, we talked about all these dads stepping up, but there are just heart-rending topics that they are addressing just with the radical trans propaganda being forced into schools on little kids right now. What can people do if they're thinking about, man, I care about this, but I don't know quite how to get involved. I don't know how to help other parents. What would your advice be?
I mean, I guess I'd start by saying this is kind of what our speak up teams do. If you want to engage this, I mean, it's our local grassroots speak up teams that are in these school boards challenging it. And then what's great about that is if you want to speak up, you're not alone then. You've got other people, you've got a strategy, you've got kind of an army. You go in together. It's just an easier way to engage that. And then I would also say there are going to be parents that might find themselves running into the same kinds of things. I mean, I'd love to believe this never happens in Virginia, but we know it does. So for parents who are actually encountering things like books that shouldn't be there or school boards that are threatening policies like Fairfax was threatening, then I would say there may be a reason to contact our law center, the Founding Freedoms Law Center. So we'll put up that information for people who might be at the point where it's like, I've got to do something about this. And it's not just speaking to the school board, it's actually, potentially litigating. Because even though that sounds hard, and it is, I don't want to downplay it, these parents that were brave in Montgomery County, they may change this for the whole country, but because it's now at the Supreme Court, that may set a precedent, may set a, so I just, courage is important. And so if this is you, somebody watching this, think about what can be done.
Like we said, courage is contagious. Yep. And you can be a part of helping thousands of other parents by helping to set a precedent, whether you encourage some other parent or you're the one to speak up. So we have attorneys waiting to help. So that's the good news. I just want to say thank you for joining us. We were going to talk about the abortion stats and just how we are leading the nation right now in Virginia. It's just such a heartbreaking stat that we are seeing, that we have a spike in abortions that is higher than anywhere else in the country right now. And we do need to dive into that, but I think we're going to have to save that for next week. So thank you all for joining us. Remember, as Victoria was talking about joining with the Speak Up team, we are stronger when we speak together. So help other people get involved by sharing our podcast. Remember to share our Speak Up Virginia playlist. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, give us that 5-star review because that helps get the word out to more people. We'll see you next time.